up with this whole point of creativity, and the role AI has in the creative process. Because I mean, to me, to some extent, I feel it's very much of a highly effective search and reapply tool. But I'm wondering, what thoughts you have on how we could really use it to augment human creativity, and some of it may be just how are asking it. Don't give me a single answer, but how would you say to get the most out of it as a creative tool? How would you say we should be using it?
Uh, that's a great question. So, I mean, I guess again, my metaphor I always use is the idea of it being a glider.
Hmm.
And if you're looking to have a glider that can get you places that are creative and innovative and game changing, or whatever terms you want to use, you need to make sure that that glider understands a lot about the space. So, if you just open up a new conversation, a new chat inside of ChatGPT or Claude, any of those things, it kind of knows everything. I mean, it's been exposed to everything. It can generate all kinds of stuff, which is good. But if you're interested in, let's say, you want to come up with a new toy that kids can use with dogs, making up something, that's great. You could say, hey, I want to come up with a new toy that kids could use with dogs, and it'll do something there, but it won't. It tends to think about toys, kids, and dogs as kind of generic placeholders. Those are just words. It doesn't really know much about kids. I mean, it knows, in some sense, it has in its brain all knowledge about kids in some weird way, but most of it tends to be sort of implicit. It tends to be hidden inside of its networks, and if it doesn't need to dig deep to find an answer, it won't. It'll say kids, dogs, toys. How about a ball? How about it'll come up with some kind of generic names, and people often complain that they only give generic answers. They're basically stochastic parrots. They're giving you what's out there, and it's because people tend to ask dumb questions. They ask the question that it can answer at a surface level, so it will. Instead, what you should be doing is saying, okay, think about kids. Kids do all kinds of things. Kids have things they love to do, things they hate to do. They have fears, they have aspirations. Think everything about kids and kind of enrich that space and tell me all about kids, but I want you to dig deep. In fact, one of the tricks that I sort of discovered is you can ask it to do clustering. You can say, think all about kids and create 5 clusters that capture everything about kids. And the trick there is that when you ask it to create these clusters, you don't tell it how to cluster. So you could say cluster them into, medical and recreational and nutritional needs, but you don't. But instead, you say, think about kids and create 5 clusters that capture all the information in kids' space. In fact, do it so that they're the optimal clusters. And that's an interesting thing. It was kind of a random insight I had years ago when I was trying to think, how can I get it to really think deeply? And I realized that, like, to cluster stuff without giving it the dimensions, it's going to have to dig into every aspect. Like if I say, I always use the example of kittens. Let's say I had 20 kittens and I say cluster them into the 3 best groups that explain everything about them. You'll have to go, well, they're different sizes. Maybe it's size, they're different colors, they have different personalities, they're different breeds. This one likes to eat the food left, right? You have to kind of, you don't know where to begin. And so you have to kind of figure out everything about cats in order to come up with a decent first guess. And it's the same with anything. So if you want your conversation to not just use the surface level representation of a kid, but instead to really know, you could say, hey, consider kids, cluster everything about them. Now that particular conversation suddenly knows all about kids. It understands, their appetites, their desires, everything. And now it's great. And you can do the same thing for dogs and for games. And once you've done that, you've created a very rich space where now it won't just give you kind of generic, easy answers. It'll actually start to be creative. There's all kinds of games you could play. You could even ask it to think about the nature of creativity, right? Create
Mhm.
5 clusters that capture all about creativity. Now come up with a creative, innovative new product that would appeal to kids, and you can get much more specific, right? So consider the market of dog toys, think about the demographics and psychographics of all the people who buy dog toys, come up with 5 different personas and identify which one is the fastest growing market currently. It's good at data. It'll say, oh, this is the one, and which one has fewest competitors. Oh, these 2 are the best. Okay, now think about what kind of things would kids of people, parents in that market. Anyway, so yeah, if you go that direction, you'll get incredible answers. I mean, it's just unbelievable how innovative and creative it can get if you know how to, I like to say, if you know how to pilot the glider, right? You can't just ask it simple questions or it'll give you simple answers. It's kind of a
That's great. I
dark.
mean, and that does go back to the whole point we talked about earlier about the human and AI collaboration. I mean, that you've really got to have kind of engaged that conversation to really, get it to
Yeah.
give you something that's going to be potentially breakthrough.
Yeah, I've been trying to get my university to start a new graduate certificate called Prompt Engineering for the Humanities or Prompt
Hmm.
Engineering for English Majors. And I have this weird image that you could imagine 5 years from now, computer scientists just can't get good jobs, and but English majors are getting offered 250,000 a year starting salaries because they're the ones who know how to kind of work in these ambiguous conceptual spaces, right? There,
Hmm.
in general, I found the talks by computer scientists about generative AI have been sort of the worst. It's almost like they know too much about what's happening under the surface and they don't realize. It's like, talking to an engine mechanic about how to drive a car. They just don't know. It's almost like don't talk to a computer scientist if you want to know how to use an LLM because they don't really know how to use an LLM. They know how an LLM works.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that having more, which also, by the way, speaks to the question of what kinds of people will be effective innovators using AI. And again, I think it's expertise. That's one thing you need, right? You need, like, I can't make up new dog toys. I mean, I could, but I'd much rather have someone with me who knows about dog toys and knows the history of dog toys and who could also spot what it's saying right now isn't true. Someone tried that
Hmm.
product, it didn't work. So you kind of need a, it's not just one human and an AI. You kind of need a couple of experts, someone who knows a bit about brainstorming, about innovation processes. You kind of need a couple of people pulled together who can fly that. The metaphor is going to fall apart, but who can fly that thing much better, right? One person, an AI on its own can't do it. One human and an AI can do stuff, but if you can bring in some expertise from different directions and different dimensions, then you can really get some fabulous, innovative ideas.